Hey, Chad here with LearnMixedReality.com and ChadCarter.net. Glad to have you aboard as we continue down this path of creating a full game from start to finish for the Windows Mixed Reality devices. And so far, we have created a pretty complete game. It's relatively simplistic, but it is complete, and all the way with having score and high scores. We have animations, we have sound, we're using the motion controllers correctly. And this session, we're going to be adding in particle systems. So we're just going to add in a single particle system. And we'll talk about particle systems a little bit and integrate it into our game. So let's go ahead and dive in. So here in our play area, I'm just going to right click inside of here and say I want to create an effects particle system. And so now we have a particle system going. So I'm going to double click on the particle system and see exactly where it's at here. And I want to move it just closer to the actual items we're going to spawn it at. Okay? And so just so it'll kind of be right about, right about where our items are at. We're going to be changing the actual positioning code. But this will let me see how we want it to work with. So I'm going to stop that for the moment. By positioning it here, when we actually play it, we'll be able to see what it will look like as a particle, explosion, if you will, when we select the right item. Now, we don't want this thing to last very long, so we're going to set this to a single second. We don't want it to loop. And we'll go ahead and make it pre-warm. And pre-warm, what that does is, let's say you're doing a particle effect of a waterfall. If you didn't have pre-warm on, and all of a sudden you came up on the waterfall, you'd actually see the water starting to fall down the cliff, and you would just kind of start, actually see it at the very beginning. When you would actually want to pre-warm, so by the time you came up to the waterfall, it was already flowing and it was a complete fall, and you didn't see it kind of start up. Okay. Our lifetime, we only want it around for about a second as well. And our start speed, well, probably don't need it quite as 5, so let's just kind of half that for now and see what that looks like. So let's hit play. And we're seeing them, just kind of last a little bit, and that's fine. So I'm going to hit stop here and actually come down to emission. And instead of rate over time, so this is, the emission of each particle. Instead of this being rate over time, I'm actually going to say that down to 0. And of course, if I hit play now, nothing's going to happen because we're not emitting any particles. If I change this to 1,000, well, now we're going to have a lot of particles. Okay, well, I say 1,000, I actually do 100. 1,000, there's 1,000. So it's a lot. So I'm going to change this back down to 0. Because instead of just simply having this emit particles over time, I actually want it to burst. So I'm going to hit plus here. And we can see we are emitting 30 particles every cycle. So every second, 30 particles are getting generated. And that's fine. All right, so I'm going to hit stop on this. And next I'm going to go down here to shape. Instead of doing this cone where we are emitting particles in this cone fashion, I'm going to do it with the sphere. So it's going to be in the sphere. And it's kind of a large sphere. We want it to kind of come out from one of these items. So let's just see what happens if I change it down to 0.5. That's still kind of large. 0.25. 0.15, 0.2. We'll try it at 0.2. Let's hit play and see. Yeah. So now we can see it's coming out into a sphere, okay? And the radius is starting right here. If I did a much bigger radius, then, it's all inside this radius, and it's very big, so it doesn't even look like you have that many. But by having a 1, then you see more, but it's still pretty large. So that's where we want to have it at this 0.2, so it's a little more contained where we want it to be. Okay. Oh, now something I should mention before we go much further is if you hit this little plus sign, well, didn't mean to close that, but here's our particle system. You hit the little plus sign here, and you can show all of each of these individual particle modules, even if you're not using them. So if I uncheck that, then the only thing we're going to see are the ones that we're using. Okay, so so we're only the main particle system module, emission, shape, and render. But so if that's all you're seeing, then hit that little plus sign and say show all modules. And that way we have a little more options here to work with. We're not going to work with too many more. In fact, I think we're only going to work with one additional one. But that's going to be my color over a lifetime. So instead of just having this thing be white the whole time, so it goes start to finish over 1 second and emits 30 particles, and that's fine. But instead of having it just white, let's change the color here. So I'm going to actually check color over lifetime, and then we'll select it. And our start color, we'll leave it as white for the time being. I'm going to change the bottom color here. So this up here is the transparency. So you see the alpha. So this is the starting transparency, and this is the ending transparency. So if I wanted it to be totally transparent by the end, then I could do so. In fact, what I could do is come all the way, kind of bring this here, so the very last bit of it is full transparency, and then or full opacity, and then full transparency. There, and we could change the end color to actually be, I don't know, we're doing peas here, so it might as well be some kind of a green. Why not? Something like that. And we could have a totally different color just by clicking on there. Now we have like two, right? So if we wanted, we could select this one to be maybe a brighter green or something. Right? So just when it first starts, it's white, and then it jumps to this green. I don't know, I'm just kind of playing around, but let's see what that looks like if I hit play. I don't like how it's going to that green, the really dark green at the end. So I'm going to stop that. Select on the color again. And let's just bring down the transparency a little more. Let's try that. Yeah, I like that better. You may or may not. You can obviously mess with this however you like to do it. I mean, the great thing about particle systems is you just you can keep tweaking with it until it looks the way you want it to look. And so, I want to know what it'll look like if I start the size a little bit smaller. So what happens if I come in here and change that to 0.2? Yeah, see, that's no good. I don't think. 0.5, maybe. 0.7. So there's 0.7. Compare that to 1. I actually think I like about 0.7 better. Yeah, so I'm going to leave it at 0.7. Now our objects are basically moving at the same speed, but if they weren't, then you could also vary your color by speed if you wanted to. You could vary the size over lifetime or over speed, so make them larger or smaller based off their type. I mean, we can do that. We can actually say size over lifetime, and we can select this little drop down and either specify a curve, a random between two constants, or a random between two curves. So for the curve, I can drag up this particle systems curve and actually work with it. And so you see the default values here is, there really is nothing. It's basically just a single constant. One would go up that way, and one would come down this way. So it starts out with a large size of 1, goes down to 0 over its lifetime linearly, right? So we hit play, you'll see they're just going to get smaller linearly, right? That's what the curve does. We could make it so that it starts off, large, and then it kind of curves down, but it's not linear, right? Or where it starts off and it stays large for a while and then it quickly goes small. And I kind of like that, so I think I'm going to leave it with that particular curve there. You can actually modify the curves itself if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that here. And I'm going to move this back down out of the way. Now another interesting thing you can do is actually create sub-emitters. And if you want to create a totally different particle system, you can have a totally different particle system and associate that here. And then with this particle system, as soon as it becomes alive, it will also generate this one. Or when a particle dies, it will generate a totally different particle system, right? So you can do that. We're not going to do a sub-emitter. Those can be kind of fun. You can create some kind of really cool firework effects by using sub-emitters. But you got to be careful that you don't, get like 3 levels deep, 6 levels deep or whatever, and all of a sudden your machine goes to a crawl because you're just emitting hundreds of thousands of particles. So finally, we're going to take a look at our render, and this is how it's going to be rendering. And you could actually render a mesh. We're just going to stick to a billboard. We're not going to mess with anything in here. But if you had a particular texture you want to render, you could do that instead of the default particle. You could do something else. Like, for example, if I hit play here, and then we actually pick a different particle or different things, right? So now this is, our wireframe. You can actually get all kinds of different looks and feels depending on what you're trying to, render. But again, I'm just going to stick to default. But here's the one with the spatial mapping that has different colors on it, right? So, depending on what you're after, you can do that. In fact, I think we have our little hand icons around here someplace. So we got like hand up or hand down. So again, if you had your own little texture, you can totally make it like that as well. We're not going to do that. I'm going to bring it back down here to default particle. And that's just going to be the particle system I'm going to stop with. But obviously you could make this look however you want to. Add multiple particle systems and kick them all off. So I'm going to hit stop here. And now let's actually start working on the code. I'm going to save our scene. Then we're going to jump over here to Visual Studio. And just like we were doing a sounds class, right? We should have a sounds class here. We're going to create another class called Particle Systems. So I'm just going to call it Particles. And it'll be a public class. And we'll get rid of the namespace. And just like the other classes we've made in the past, we're just going to say we're going to have an actual game object we can get access to, which will actually be our particles. And we need to make sure we're bringing in the Unity engine. So I hit Control Dot to bring in Unity engine, and we'll get rid of the other usings here. Bring in a constructor, and our constructor will also take in the game object. This pattern should seem familiar because it's kind of what we've been doing in the previous sessions here. And this dot particles is equal to the particles we're going to bring in. And so in our game controller, right, we're going to have a particle system. So we'll say private particles. And just like we had set up our sound source, we're also going to set up particle system. And here we'll say private void setup particle systems. And we're going to set this to new particles, and we're going to need to pass in the game object. And we'll do the very same thing that we did before. We did a game object, find game object with tag, and that's all we care about is the game object itself. So won't need a component off of it. So we're going to do this as particles. So back to our resource, and again, if this doesn't seem familiar, definitely watch some of the previous sessions where basically have this helper class for resources, and inside of here we just create a string. This way all of our magic strings are in one place. And that's the point of this. And we'll just call it particles, and the magic string is actually going to be particles too. So let's get back to the actual particle class. So we've kind of hooked this up. Now we will need to actually create a game. We will need to create a tag. Let's do that now. Let's actually create that tag now. So I'm going to jump over here to Unity, select our particle system, and we're going to add a tag of particles, and we'll save that. We'll select our particle system again and actually associate particles to it. And we'll stop the particle effect here. And get back over to Visual Studio. And again, our resource was particles, plural, so we should be good there. So here in our particles class, we're going to save that. And let's start building this thing out. Now, just like our animation and just like our sound, we want to have a method that's public where we can play the particles and one where we can stop the particles. Okay, so I'll just say public void play particle system. And we'll also have one public void stop particle system. Okay. Now for the play, we actually want to know where we're going to play it, because right now we just kind of have this particle system. We currently just have this particle system we can double click on it here to see it, and we can see we just have it, you know, right here with one of our eyes. I'm going to stop that for a second. And what we want to do is, if I select the right answer for this box, then I want the particle system to start here. If it's this box over here, I want to start there, and of course one in the center, the one in the center. So because of that, when I play the particle system, I need to tell it the position where I want it to play. So that's going to just be a vector 3, right? So this is going to be our position data, and we'll call it position. So we have our game object. It is a particle system, and so we're just going to say particles.transform.position is equal to that position. And now that we've set the position of the particles, the next thing we'll do is actually call play. So we're going to say get components of a particle system. And once we have that component, we'll just call play. And it's pretty much as simple as that to actually play our particle system. And likewise, on the stop, we'll just say particles, get component, particle system, and we'll call stop. So that is our entire particles class from start to finish. So relatively simple, much like our animation one and a lot like our sounds. So not a lot to it. And now our game controller, we need to actually call the play particle systems and the stop particle systems. So we have this method called setup particle systems, and I'm assuming we called that up here, and we did. So we called that in starts. That's great. We also want to make sure, because right now our particle system is just, you know, and it's just typically playing by default. So we want to be able to stop that as soon as we start up. So just like we set up a particle system, as soon as here we actually want to stop it as well. So we'll just say particles dot stop particle system. And that's done. We want to start it, of course, when we make a match. So here under match made, as soon as we play the sound, we want to call a particles.play particle system, and we need to pass in that position. So this is going to be, remember, our items, we have our items in our game controller from our items containers. So if you recall, when we first started setting this stuff up, we had these individual items, right? So item 1, 2, and 3. In our game controller, we had the item containers where we drug in items 1, 2, and 3 to those. Since we have access to these items, what we want to do is we want to say item containers sub e.id.transform.position, right? So we're getting the item that was just clicked on because we know which one we just made a match with, and we're going to grab that item's position and pass that into our particle system to play. And we want to make sure we can stop this particle system when we're done. And that's going to need to happen when our items get reset. So, yeah, so up here under reset complete, we're going to call particles dot stop particle system, and we'll save that. And that should be everything we need to actually set up the particle systems correctly. So let's jump over here to Unity, and our particle system has the tag it needs. So I'm going to save the scene. Let's stop on this and actually hit play on the game. Now, so the particle system is only playing when we get the right answer and not when we get the wrong one, so that's good. And it shouldn't play now because it wasn't a match, so that's good. But when it is finding it, of course, see if I can find it here, it's playing too long. And that's just simply because we have it looping, and I really don't want it looping. So when it does the when it does it once, that should be enough. So assuming I actually, get it right once. There we go. Yeah, so it's looping. We just want to stop that. So I'm going to hit play here, and we'll stop the particle system over here. Now I'm going to take off the looping. And so now, yeah, we just get it once. And I like that a whole lot better. So it's a nice little burst of energy. We have it, green. You could obviously do whatever you want to here. But now we have a nice particle system. And, granted, with the items that we have here just being the cubes and simply disappearing, if you wanted to, what you might want to do is actually make this an object that rotates. So when you select on it, it actually rotates backwards to show the P there rather than just simply disappearing. But I'm going to leave that as an exercise for you if that's something you would like to do. Because at this point, I believe we have a full game from start to finish, complete with score and high score, animation, sound, and particle systems, or at least a particle system, and the logic for when the game over and you have the multiple strikes. So I'm going to stop playing that. We've covered quite a bit in this series. We started off creating the table and those 3 items and the P's that's in those items. And then we spent a long session talking about the game logic and creating up the events and creating tests for that. And then we actually hooked that game logic up to our game controllers. And then we start talking about the motion controllers and had it actually working with the motion controllers. Then we added in scoring. And we actually start, showing the P correctly. We hooked up all the different text values here for our score, high score, and our strikes. We set that logic up for all those. Then we created the animation to actually animate the items, and then hooked up those animations to code. And then last session we created the sounds, hooked up the sounds, and this session we created the particles. So we're going to wrap up the series next session. So with that, if you've enjoyed this series, let me know by hitting that like button. And if you've not, go and hit that dislike button. That way I can know whether I should spend my time doing this or spend my time doing something differently. And if you did like it, feel free to hit that subscribe button. That way you can be notified for future videos. So I create videos every single week here on YouTube, and I'd hate for you to miss out on anything that you'd want to see. So I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you in the next video.